right, let's welcome and let's look at this example. So in here we're asked to identify the data type for these characteristics. Right? So we can identify data as quantitative and or qualitative. Quantitative is classified either as discrete or continuous. Discrete means that you can count individual items. Continuous means that it's not discrete. You can't count individual items in your data. It's something that's measured. Alright, so that's a good way to think about it. Discrete is things that you can count. Right? And continuous is things that you can measure. Right? So these are kind of broad definitions. Sometimes when you're looking at things that could fall in either category, it kind of depends what you're doing to classify them. The reason we classify things like this is because you use different methods for doing statistics. If you have quantitative discrete or quantitative continuous, you're going to use different kinds of formulas, right? Sometimes they blend. Sometimes you can approximate one with the other. And you can also classify data as qualitative. So this is like a characteristic rather than a count or a measure. This is also called categorical data. All right. So let's look at these examples. Okay, so first let's break them down into categorical and quantitative and qualitative. All right, so the number of pairs of shoes you own. So this is something that you can count. Okay, so this means that this is quantitative and it's discrete. All right, the type of car you drive. So you go, I can't count and I can't measure. It's a characteristic of the car, the car. So this is qualitative or categorical. All right. Distance is from your home to the nearest grocery store. Okay, so this is a measurement, right? You can measure the distance with a measuring tape with your car, right? Your car distance thing measures it, or with a pedometer. So you're not gonna count. I mean, you can count the steps, but you don't really measure distance that way. It's basically, it can be a mile, 1.2 miles, 1.34 miles. So this is quantitative continuous. All right. D, the number of classes you take per school year. So this is something you can count. I take 2, I take 3, I take 4. So it's quantitative discrete. Type of calculator you use. No, this is nothing you can count or measure, so this is qualitative. Weights of sumo wrestlers. So this is something you measure, right? You get on the scale. So this is quantitative continuous. Right. Number of correct answers on the quiz. Right, so you can have 3, 4, 10 correct. So quantitative discrete, something you count. IQ scores. Okay, so IQ scores, if you know anything about them, You take an IQ test and it's sort of, you get a certain amount of problems correct and incorrect. So you could think of scores as quantitative discrete, but the IQ score, the way it's given, it's not really how many questions you get right or wrong. It's more like a percentage or like a weighted kind of average that it's given to you. So it's not the raw scores, not the raw data that this is how many questions you got right and wrong. There's some sort of calculations that sort of involved to get that score. So this is classified as quantitative continuous because it can fall on a scale. I don't think, I guess it has to be positive, and you could go technically forever, although it kind of tops at around 150 or so, maybe 160. I'm not sure how high the IQ scores of people go, but you could get anything sort of in between those numbers. Okay, so technically you could get a decimal score the way it's presented. Okay, so that's quantitative continuous. All right.